Welcome back, film fans. Hope you're all well. Hope you're doing good. I thought I'd jump on to discuss and kind of give my thoughts, again, review of, if you like, of some sorts, of the 88 films released this week, actually, Blu-ray release of Michael Mann's 2006 film, Miami Vice, which is here in a nice, lovely, oh, as you can see, as it's perfectly timed, 2-disc slipcover, limited edition slipcover. Also comes with um, a collector's booklet, which mine came damaged, typical, right? And double-sided poster as well. Those are the limited edition kind of aspects of this. And it's a 2-disc release of this film. You have disc 1 is the 132-minute theatrical cut. It also has like special features from previous physical releases of the film, coupled with a 50-minute original documentary for this release, where they previous cast and crew members, although not the stars of the film and Mann himself, which is a shame, but other cast and crew members, which is interesting to hear their perspectives on the kind of their stories from the making of the film, and also the kind of the somewhat minor cultish impact and legacy it's had, particularly in regards to its utilization of digital photography that the film has had since, and its comparisons and how it differs to the TV series as well. So it's an interesting 50-minute watch if you have the time and the interest to watch it. And then disc 2 has the 139-minute director's cut of the film. There's the back for you, which I haven't watched yet. So for the purposes of this video, I just watched the theatrical cut to reacquaint myself with it. Because I'm not overly familiar with the theatrical cut, I thought I can't discern what the differences are with the director's cut or appreciate it properly without first revisiting the theatrical cut. Although I do know the director's cut has this. So the opening is different. They have like a speedboat chase sequence in the director's cut that opens the film, as opposed to the kind of the in media res cold open in the club, which served in the theatrical cut, where kind of you're just thrown into the thrust of the story with Crockett and Tubbs on a kind of like stakeout investigation in this club, of course, with the Numb Encore playing the Linkin Park Jay-Z collaboration, which a lot of people like that opening. And although a lot of people apparently like the speedboat chase sequence, but I just don't think they like it as the opening and replacing the previous opening of the film. So, but this is Michael Mann, right? I think for those of you that are fans of him, you know, not only is he kind of a perfectionist when he's making his films, he'll do multiple takes and so on and so forth, as well as ridiculous amounts of research for pre-production before going into making his films, which I think is why he's not the most prolific of filmmakers. He doesn't make that many movies. Saying that, he's obviously got a film out at the moment, right? The Ferrari film, as I will call it, which I haven't, of course, seen yet. And yeah, I mean, physical media releases have shown that he's a film's never a finished thing for him. I think he always kind of is tinkering about. I say this release coincides with Arrow's 4K release of Black Cat, which is the last film he made before the Ferrari film, which has multiple cuts on as well, which I'll probably do a video on when I pick that copy up. But obviously, for all intents and purposes, we're going to be discussing Miami Vice here, which of course is like I say, was made in 2006. Is ostensibly a kind of, not really a remake, but a reimagining of the TV series of the same name, of course, from the 80s, which Michael Mann served on as a lead producer, which is obviously a very iconic series, right? And I think, so I'll give a bit of backstory as to my experiences with this film. So I actually saw this film on theatre release, cinematic release, way back in 2006. It might have been one of the first 15 rated films I saw, actually. And I went with a school friend at the time, and I had a lot of expectations going into the film because of, I hadn't seen Miami Vice, the TV series, at the time, but obviously I knew of it. It's kind of, it's culty, it's iconic, right? And it's the kind of emblem of that, almost that trashy, excessive 80s aesthetic that a lot of people love, I think. And so I knew of that, but I hadn't seen it. And then I had other kind of cultural touchstones, namely the key one being the video game Grand Theft Auto Vice City, which for those of you that don't know is a kind of open world crime simulation game, or a sandbox game as it's known in the industry, where Essentially, it's set in 1980s Miami, or Vice City as the city's called in the game. And it riffs off basically a lot of 80s pop culture. The two key ones being De Palma's 1983 film Scarface, which I also loved way back then, and the TV series Miami Vice. So I had all these things that I loved as kind of reference points going in. And even though I knew the film was set in modern day America at the time, 2006 America, and Miami, obviously, of course, in particular, I somehow still kind of expected these links or similarities to what I loved. And so I went in and I watched the film with my friend and I hated it. I really hated it. I thought at the time it was probably like the worst film that I'd seen in the cinema. Part of that is because of those expectations that I had leading in, which is, that's the fault's on me there, of course. But another part of it is because I don't know if it was the cinema I saw it in, which would have been my frequent cinema that I went to at the time. So I don't think it's this, but I just found I thought the sound mixing was awful. A lot of the dialogue, very hard to discern what people are saying, very hard to listen to. At the same time, the action was super loud. And when you can't hear the dialogue in a Michael Mann film, that's a problem, because a lot of his films are very dialogue driven, exposition heavy. A lot of his particular brand of cinematic realism comes from the interactions that the very lived in dialogue, the patter particularly between criminals and the law cops. So if you can't understand what's going on, you're not gonna be able to follow the plot very well. But then again, even though I couldn't discern what was going on too much from the dialogue, I found the plot just very kind of somewhat uninvolving. And I found it, despite the fact that the film was 2 hours plus long, I felt the ending came out of nowhere. I felt the ending was very anticlimactic and sudden. And if you don't like an ending of a film, that can reassess your whole interpretation of what you think of a film in general anyway, right? So I came out and I was very disappointed and deflated with the film. And as a result, I haven't seen it since. And what's an interesting thought experiment here, when I say I haven't seen it since, it's been 17 years since this film came out in cinemas. When this was made at the time, 2006, it was 20 years since Miami Vice aired, first aired. So almost the same amount of time has passed now since the TV series and the film, from the film to the present moment, which is kind of scary to think about, I think. It is crazy that this film was released almost 20 years ago. And that Michael Mann really hasn't made that much since, right? He did Public Enemies in 2009 and Black Hat in 2000 and, when was that, 15, 13, 16? Can't remember when Black Hat was made. Somewhere around then. And what's, again, doubly interesting is, so I haven't seen the film since, and yet in all that time, all the while, the film has really gained a lot of a kind of rabid cultish following. It's really gained in acclaim, actually. At the time, it received kind of lukewarm critical reception, but since, there have been pockets of people, and it's gaining. It's really kind of burgeoning the support of the film in critical stature. I don't know if it's Cahiers du Cinema. I swear there's one notable cinema publication that had it as like one of the 10 best films of the noughties. A lot of people do view it now as Michael Mann's masterpiece, which I just found baffling for the longest time. So I've went in, and like I said, I bought it, and I thought, you know what, it's time to rewatch this and see if my opinions change now that I'm older and wiser. So I watched it yesterday, and my overall thoughts are that I do like it a lot more now. I do like it a lot more. I think my opinion on it has, if not wholly reversed, it has, you could kind of say, completely changed and somewhat transformed. Part of that is because I don't have the expectations that I had when I first saw the film. So I wasn't expecting to be disappointed again, but I wasn't going to be disappointed because I already thought lowly of the film, if you like. And I think now I understand a bit more of what Michael Mann was trying to do, or at least, first off, I appreciate the the digital photography so much more, which is weird now because you think because it's more commonplace now, it wouldn't stand out as much. But actually, it kind of stands out more now, which is really strange. It's a kind of beautiful film, but it's beautiful in its seediness. And this is for me the fascinating thing about this film now, is having seen some of the TV series since, but not all of it. The fascinating thing for me is how it takes elements of the TV series, such as like various plot points, for example, but it's in how it differs so much from the TV series. So the TV series is kind of like, it has that, like I say, that excessive, trashy 80s aesthetic. This film is a very kind of serious and almost somber and sincere take. It's to be taken seriously, this film, I think, of the same material. And whereas Miami Vice almost like had a kind of like jokey vibe to it of that we are not meant to be taking these kind of like, let's be honest, some of them real world scenarios of the criminality of what was a severe problem of the drugs trade in 80s Miami. Didn't really take, he kind of took it jovially, right? Not seriously. It was just entertainment for entertainment's sake. This is a lot more of a somber film, and and I don't want to give too much away in terms of spoilers in case you haven't seen it, but not everything concludes happily, I would say. In fact, it has a kind of somewhat of a pessimistic, or at least ambiguous in terms of its emotionality ending. And there's a kind of tragic element to it. And the reason why this film I think is so sincere is because Michael Mann he's a very romantic director, and he takes a romanticized approach to his material. And so at the heart of this is a kind of love story, which is strange, I think. Or not strange, but unexpected, I would say. Maybe not unexpected if you're overly familiar with Michael Mann's work, but it's certainly unexpected if you go in just loving the TV series, I would say. And so it does these things where, in the contrast of its difference between the TV series, but also in some ways in the contrast to the kind of the key elements of Michael Mann's own work, it does stand out oddly. At least it seems to be a distillation of the motifs of Michael Mann's work, like a real kind of distillation of what makes Michael Mann so singular, or at least distinct as a director. Certainly visually, like I say, the visuals in this film are they're kind of stunning. You have that, a lot of the shots in Miami have the kind of this thunder rumbling in the background, this thunder and this lightning that's kind of present, and the digital photography, because it's capable of keeping so much more in focus, particularly to deep focus, right? It has this effect where it almost feels like the images are layered. So because of that, you almost get like, and this of course makes no sense what I'm really saying, because all cinema is about the illusion of 3D, but you get this kind of added illusion of 3D through its kind of this, almost like the characters stand out from the backdrop of the image, almost like as if, like I say, that like the film's been re-exposed and they've been layered on afterwards or something. It's a really, it's like everything's illuminated but not. It's hard to explain. It's a very, very tactile is the perfect word for this, I think. It's a very, very tactile film. And so I think a lot of the joy and a lot of the positive attributes of this film come from the tone of the film, or I suppose what we would now call the vibe of the film, right? But I suppose we could call it Miami vibe. And it certainly does have a very, very distinct vibe. And I just think the tone of the film is really, really interesting. And I think once you kind of drop I'm not saying don't pay attention to the plot, because I think paying attention to the plot is necessary. And like I say, Michael Mann's one of those filmmakers where, I said this when I was reviewing The Killer, which if you haven't seen that video, check it out, where I reviewed David Fincher's The Killer, where I say he's similar to David Fincher in the sense that they're both filmmakers where your desire or your need to watch and listen, the closer attention you pay, the more you're rewarded as a viewer. I certainly think that's true of Michael Mann, because his films feel so lived in. I'm yet to be convinced, though, still, that this is a kind of his masterpiece. I think, for me, his very, very best work. I mean, I can see myself appreciating this the more I rewatch it, and I will watch the director's cut soon, so I can see if I essentially if I prefer that version, or if it helps me appreciate even the theatrical version even more. But I think Michael Mann's best work is where he almost like the emotional predicaments of his characters. They feel I feel like here the ending that he was going for, the emotional payoff for me isn't earned by the plot and the events that we've seen in the film, whereas I feel like something like Heat it is. For example, the stakes, you really feel the stakes, and you really feel emotionally invested and conflicted as a viewer. I think in Miami Vice you don't get that, and I think some of the things that Michael Mann was aiming for, so this idea that the further the cops burrow themselves into kind of their police work and their fabricated lives and identities, the more that they're unable to discern the difference between law and order, or the more that they might switch and give up their lives altogether. I don't feel that's fully fleshed out by the film. I don't feel, or at least the emotionality of that isn't conveyed. Again, another fascinating part of this film is how you get two movie stars at the height of their stardom give actually really restrained and unshowy performances, which again, compared to the iconic characters of Crockett and Tubbs, which are kind of all flash and no substance in the series, or I shouldn't say all flash and no substance, but the way the series is constructed robs you of a kind of a narrative cohesion that runs all the way through, that can really build up a style of characterization that you see in the best TV series of today, for example. But here it's kind of the opposite. You get a lot of substance from the fact that not much is given away as such. And I mean, I've seen some people refer to this film as a kind of tone poem, which, yes, I can see how, for me, it's more about the style and the aesthetic and the tone of the film, letting that wash over you, as it were. I mean, the use of blue in this film in particular, because it's essentially characterized by a lot of dark, blues and greys and the darkness of the night. And there is this idea, no one really shoots the night as well as Michael Mann, I think. You just have to look at, I mean, Heat's a good example. Collateral's an even better example. And I think I proved somewhat of a convert on this. I think I've got my opinion very, very wrong at the time. And I do really, really appreciate this film more. I just don't think it's a masterpiece like some make out. But who knows? Maybe my opinion will change further with time. I'd be interested to know what you guys think. Is this one of your most revered Michael Mann films, or do you hate it? Did you hate it when it came out and you still hate it now? So I'd be interested to know your opinions on this. If you've seen this as well, if you plan to pick this up, I advise that you do. Like I said, the documentary on here is good. You got both cuts of the film. And it looks nice, right? It looks good as well, which always helps. So at least I think the cover art's great. So let me know what you guys think. Like I say, I plan to review Black Hat probably within the next week if I manage to pick it up. So that'll be interesting. And that's another film which my opinions on it are kind of, they're interesting. It's a film I've thought about quite a bit about, which is kind of weird, I guess, because I didn't think much of it as I was watching it. But I'll go into Black Hat more when I do the video. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe as well if you want to. You want to see more content like this. And as always, I'll see you on the next one, which might be Black Hat. So yeah, look forward to that. And as always, take care.